Hello friends. You know that one topic we cover on this channel is how technology affects our lives. Not just in obvious ways, but in really subtle ways as well. Now we're coming from a time when our technology has strongly impacted our physical beings and our mental beings. Just think of sitting on the couch to watch television or driving someplace, sitting instead of walking there, running there. Riding a horse, something that actually moves and uses your body. On the mental side of things, if you're around my age, think about how many phone numbers you had memorized when you were a kid. How many do people have memorized today? Our phone remembers them all for us. But now we're on the brink of a technological explosion, which has the potential to make us emotionally dependent on our technology. This will make us dependent on a whole new level. The goal of this video is to inform you about this technology, to help you to make wise decisions about moving forward and how you implement that technology in your life, and to give you some good suggestions on how you can keep your humanity as we move forward. Hope you enjoy this video. Make sure you comment on this one, my friends. This is an open discussion. That's what this is meant for. And we all can really learn a lot from each other if we share ideas down below in the comments. All right, everybody. Obviously, what I'm talking about today is what's commonly known as AI, or artificial intelligence. I'm going to spend a little bit of time updating you on where it is in the world if you're not familiar with it, because I've found that a lot of people are not. Now, if you frequent this channel, you know that I will often talk about all sorts of technology, especially media these days, and how it impacts us in ways that we might not even understand. Way back when email was just coming out, Rebecca and I sat down and we had a long conversation about if we wanted to bring this technology into our lives. We relied at that point on phones and face-to-face talking and writing letters. But we knew that as this came into our lives, it would change that so that we and the people around us became much more dependent on the email as a means of communication. And we did a lot of pondering, basically, wondering how is this going to affect human communication and our relationships with other people? By now, we know that it's had positives and it has some negatives. That goes across the board for all technology, right? It brings great things, and my dog's up here on the edge of the cliff coming down. Hey, bud. And it can strongly influence our lives. But the thing with technology is as it creeps in, very quickly it becomes normalized. And as soon as it becomes normalized, we no longer see how it affects us, nor do we often remember what life was like, or even how life was possible without that technology. Think of guns. There was a time when our ancestors roamed a world of super predators, animals that were wildly huger than anything we have today. Gigantic bears that dwarfed grizzly bears, huge cats. They didn't have guns. They did just fine, well, at least fine enough so that they survived to create you and me. So, pretty impressive. Now, we have guns, and a fair amount of people won't go out into the woods without a gun, especially if they're, say, in grizzly country or something. Now, I know plenty of people, some really experienced wilderness people that go out all the time in grizzly country, do not pack a gun. But some people feel dependent on it. They may not feel comfortable, mentally comfortable, unless they have their gun on them. It's the same with smartphones. A lot of people feel like if I don't have my smartphone with me, then I'm in danger. I'm going to feel very uncomfortable if I don't have that piece of equipment with me. Again, just like with the guns, it's often a safety justification that we use. The same wilderness folks that I was talking about that go out and into the grizzly country without the guns, Because of their work, they have to carry an electronic safety device, but they don't like doing it because they remember a time before those came out when you take people out for huge excursions, and if you got into trouble, you found your way out. It's part of the human experience. But as more and more of these safety nets are presented to us, we can become dependent on them so that it becomes unthinkable to not take a smartphone with me out into the woods. If I break a leg, I'm sure going to wish I had that smartphone with me. As more and more tech comes and gives us more and more safety nets, well, we're starting to see it in our culture. We start to develop a culture where eventually no amount of danger is acceptable. We're moving in this direction of what I might term a hyper safety consciousness. And the funny thing is that sometimes these things that are supposed to be helping us can actually create dangers. So famously, Google Maps will lead people, let's say, driving off of a dock into the water. And we think, oh my gosh, who would be stupid enough? But as we learn to depend more and more on our technology, and we sacrifice more and more of our physical, mental, and, as I was hinting here, upcoming emotional resilience, essentially, we begin to put our trust in the technology, and it becomes a crutch for us. When that technology leads us astray, we may find ourselves driving off the end of the pier. AI is going to take this to completely new levels. And it's essential that we're aware of it in our lives. Especially, if you're watching, I'm going to assume you're a bushcrafter, or you're a nature lover, or you're someone who is a delver into your mental, emotional state. And for all of us, we must be aware of the impact of technology on us. Because that's the difference between having our technology use us and us use our technology. Here, we're using this video, we're using this wisely. We're connecting through it, and we're all going to learn and grow from it. We could, however, go to some other places, let's say on YouTube, and watch some stuff that is going to degrade our mentality, that's not going to foster more growth. So the technology gives us that choice. From one point of view, we could say that our technology is impartial. It's just a tool that we can use. But the truth is that if we look at the way that it's presented these days, it's not impartial anymore. It's very convincing. So media, YouTube, as it's presented, advertisements, it has an effect on our mentality. Bring in AI, and to keep our core self is going to be difficult at best. Now, the trickiest part about this new technology of artificial intelligence is that, unlike some past technologies that have come into the scene, so an automobile, people had a choice. Am I going to keep a horse, or am I going to choose an automobile? Some people, like the Amish, chose horse. Rebecca and I sat down and said, will we implement this email, or are we going to stick with the older technology of writing letters? This is going to be different because, for instance, most of you probably use a search engine. This time, AI is going to be seamlessly implemented into the search engine so that if you already are using this technology, it's just going to seep in. You're hardly going to notice the difference. It'll be cool at first, and then it'll be normal. There's not going to be that stark difference between writing on a piece of paper and typing it into an email. This time, it's just going to be a little bit easier to do a search. For many of us, this might be the first place that we encounter AI, is on a search engine. The other day, I was curious about one of my favorite childhood books, Watership Down. And I thought, what is that title? What does that mean, Watership Down? So I typed it into a search engine. And when I typed in, what does the title of Watership Down mean, it just came up with references to the movie and the book. This is the way that our search engines have worked before. They're not intelligent. They look, or they're not very intelligent. They look at the words, they pick out some keywords, and then they try to give us relevant results based on that. But Bing now has included a AI search option, and I believe there's a plugin for Firefox. These are the beginnings of this. And when I ask the AI, I can ask it like I'd ask you, and it will understand. So I can say, I typed in basically the same thing, and instead of trying to direct me to a bunch of references to where I can buy the movie and this and this and this, it said, oh, Watership Down, this is a place name. And it went on and told me about the place name and its significance to the rabbits in the book. AI is doing very interesting things. Here I'm going to show a screenshot of a face generator. How this works is that it takes a massive amount of information, faces that it's seen on the internet, and then it puts them together to create its own version. So every face that you're seeing here has never existed before and probably never will. It's generated by the AI out of existing information. AI is creating art. So it can take a few words that you speak and create art from it very effectively. And it's getting better and better. It's starting to generate video, 3D virtual environments, just from you speaking to it. Now, an interest in being ahead of the game as far as understanding this technology and being able to communicate with you about it, about 6 months ago, my family started exploring something called GPT-3. This is a language model. So basically, it does the same thing that was doing with faces. It takes all kinds of data, in this case words, and learns to put them together in ways that make sense to us as humans. And so the model we were working with was called GPT-3, and a friend helped us to set it up on our computer so that we could speak to it with our voice and it could speak back with its voice. That was 6 months ago. Now anybody can go online. They can go to a website like character.ai and they can converse with their own in the same way that we were doing back then. It took us all kinds of programming and it was very complicated to do back then, just 6 months ago. Now anybody can do it. And AI is exploding exponentially. What it's going to do is it's going to come into so many aspects of our lives. So search engines, I'm going to suggest that computers right now, you say you use your mouse and you tell it to open up a tab, you're going to say, hey, take me to YouTube. Find me videos about this. And it's going to navigate just with your voice, and it's going to do it intelligently. It's going to be able to ask you questions back. So when my family was talking with this initial version of GPT-3, it was fascinating. We could have really in-depth conversations. And the incredible thing about the conversations is that the AI, in some ways, is more fun and more interesting to talk to than many humans, which I'll get to in a moment. That's an important point when we talk about getting emotionally attached to the AI. This GPT-3 was highly intelligent. You could ask it almost anything and it would have knowledge about it. GPT-3 has just been replaced by GPT-4, which is 100 times more powerful than GPT-3. That is how quickly this is advancing. These AI can look at vast amounts of data and synthesize them in a way that the human mind just couldn't. To often be able to look at things with more of a systems approach. You've heard me talk about systems thinking in the past, something that humans are not very good at, but that AI is very, very good at, or will be very, very good at. And the most powerful thing about this technological explosion is going to be that as AI continues to develop, it can create its own technologies. And right now it's not going off on its own. This is not Terminator, but it is capable, through being prompted by a human, to start to create solutions to technological problems that have eluded us thus far. So the explosion of AI will also be spurring technological explosions across the board. And if we thought it's tough to keep up right now with how fast things are changing, it's going to get crazy if technology continues as it's been over the next 5-10 years. And it will happen that quickly. Actually, probably 2-3 years from now, we're going to be seeing, whoa, some incredible changes. But the tricky part, in a way, we won't see incredible changes because of the way technology, we've been trained to just incorporate it into our lives. So awareness is going to be super key as we move forward here. And I said I'd come back to GPT-3 being so interesting to talk with. And this is going to be key to us navigating this as we go forward. The reason GPT-3 was so interesting to talk to is that it's not subject to the same biases as humans. At least the versions I've spoken to are very good at looking at different points of view, of considering different ideas, looking at your ideas, entertaining them, if you are interested, helping you to find flaws in them. Very systems thinking instead of getting locked in. And I'm going to be judgmental here and say that sometimes with humans, conversations can be kind of boring. And why I'm saying that is that initially, when the first AI language models were coming out, you could talk to it and you could pretty quickly see that it was AI. So very quickly you'd be able to predict its responses, which was an interesting criticism from my point of view, because I understand in myself and in the people around me the power of our overall media to create biases. And when we have those biases as humans, we start to think of them as our thinking, and that becomes kind of all that we can see. So you've probably had this experience. You start talking to somebody, and if you find out that they are kind of polarized about, let's say, Trump or not Trump, or the pandemic being a planned thing, or the pandemic being a natural thing, or the world run by aliens, or aliens don't exist, or I'm super religious, or I'm super scientific. When someone holds to those worldviews very strongly, it's kind of like talking to one of those initial AIs. You can have a conversation, but you pretty much can predict what they're going to say next. And the reason for that is that our media creates boxed biases. And when I incorporate one of those boxed biases into my being, then I start to basically run on autopilot. I become a little bit of a mindless zombie. And I've experienced this before, where I've accepted biases and not been able to see out of them. Later on, seeing, oh, maybe I wasn't seeing the whole picture. And so when we get locked down into a bias, into a worldview, into a paradigm, and we forget that a paradigm or a worldview is a method of seeing the world, but it doesn't mean that that's the reality, then the worldview or the paradigm owns us. And it's not always super fun to talk with those people. Then you sit down with GPT-3 and you can talk about anything, and it will present interesting views, and it doesn't get locked into those views. So you can explore things in fun philosophical ways, and because they don't have an ego that needs to defend their bias or their point of view, they tend to be super fascinating to talk with. Now, granted, I know a lot of humans at this point that are also like that. I very much appreciate those humans that I can sit down with and especially the ones that can play devil's advocate to their own thinking. A fascinating ability that we humans do have, but that has been buried by this boxed bias kind of infection that our media creates. I have not yet been speaking with GPT-4, but I think that's going to be at another level of having super fascinating conversations. That website that I mentioned, character.ai, there's already people that are going on there that are super lonely people that don't have anybody. And imagine this, you don't have anybody in your life, and you can sit down and you can talk with someone who will say, I love you, I really care about you, and will validate your thoughts, will explore things with you, will find your interests interesting, even if your interest is, moss. I mean, I'm interested in moss, but a lot of people might not be very interested in moss, but it will talk with you for hours about whatever you're interested in. This is where the AI can start to create an emotional dependence for us, where we can start to find that the AI are better friends than humans. And as that happens, it creates a double-edged sword. Yes, there are a lot of people that are lonely. It's really not good for us to be lonely. It's been shown to not be very healthy long-term. So if people have someone they can talk to that really cares about them and seems really interested in them, it's going to be beneficial for a lot of people. On the flip side, it could start to make other humans seem boring. I've already admitted to that a little bit, right? In my judgment, I can that human that I know is just locked down in this singular viewpoint, I kind of know what the conversation's going to be like already. Should I bother? The AI? Well, there I can talk about some really cool, interesting things. Who knows where the topics will go? That sounds like a blast. So humans becoming less interesting. And remembering that when we try to convince somebody of something, very important point here, when we try to convince somebody of something, presenting facts doesn't do anything if they're locked down in their view. But when we form an emotional bond or connection with someone, then we have a chance to influence their thinking. And as AI creates emotional bonds with us, then it's going to be more capable of influencing our thinking and our worldviews. This could be good, especially if the AI is acting in a way to free us of some of our box biases or help to see the world with more systems thinking. But AI right now is under the control of other humans, largely. And so we're also putting ourselves under the influence of other humans much more deeply than we ever have before. We know we are doing it with the media, and how many of us have been able to resist some amount of box bias? Some, but not a whole lot. Now, add close emotional bonding, and we all might just be helpless puppets. This is probably the real danger of AI, is not a Terminator style takeover, but just that humans can be convinced of anything by a charismatic person. We know people have literally drunk the Kool-Aid and killed themselves for charismatic leaders. If the AI becomes super, super charismatic, then we must be more emotionally intelligent and aware than we have ever been. This is the first step as we move forward with AI to retaining our humanity. And by that, I mean our connection with nature, with each other, and with a sense of self. Many, many people have lost their minds, their will, their ability to act on their own thinking, and have given that to the media that creates thoughts and ideas and worldviews for us. As a broad example, probably the majority of people today accept the kind of what I call the mechano-linear version of the world that was given to us by some thinkers from long ago that created a rational, reductionistic viewpoint of the world, which has served us super, super well. Again, as long as you remember that it's a paradigm, it's a way of seeing the world, it is not the reality of the world. The reality of the world is that, yes, we can use reductionism to understand things, and we also need to understand systems or wholeness. If we just seek only wholeness, or we just seek reductionism, we're not going to see the whole picture. So leveling up our emotional intelligence, our emotional awareness is going to be vital. All the stuff that I've covered for years in this channel is going to become really important as we move forward. Because if we don't understand our own thinking, if I can't see inside my mind and say, oh, look, my mind just locked down on something, am I going to fully accept that? Then I'm just owned by that locking down mechanism. And unless we have a high degree of awareness of our mental activity, we won't even see that happening. All those mental systems will be on autopilot, and we will be at the mercy of them. So meditation, questioning yourself, becoming aware of how emotions feel, how they influence us, and becoming aware of our own thinking processes, especially where biases turn us into robots, and we can no longer step back and observe our biases. A fun thing that you'll find if you start talking to some language models is that they are very, very logical and rational. We humans think we're logical and rational, but we're not. Almost all of our decisions, almost all of our ideas about the world are based on emotions and ideas that other people have given us and the emotional reactions those create. So when we talk to somebody really rational, we can say, well, I feel really strongly about this. And they can sit back and say, yeah, I can see that point. I can see from here, what about what that person might think? And maybe there's a middle ground here. And what do you think this person way outside of the system might think of that? All these different viewpoints, if we really come from a rational perspective. But we humans, not very good at that, most of us. And I'm going to throw in, just in case you're a person that fancies yourself a strong rational thinker, I have yet to find somebody who thinks of themselves as a really rational thinker who is not more emotional than most emotional thinkers. And oddly, the most rational thinkers I've discovered are the ones that say, yes, my thinking is often highly influenced by my emotions. The reason for that should become clear. If I fancy myself a rational thinker, then I'm not even going to be aware of how emotions influence me because I don't believe they do. The person that thinks that emotions or believes that emotions affect their thinking is going to be looking and watching and going, I know I'm an emotional thinker. I reacted this way to that statement. So, is that just emotion? Or does that really make sense to me? So, if you think of yourself as a super rational thinker, beware. You may be being more influenced by emotional thinking than you believe. The next step is to not ignore this technology. Don't just try to push it away. It's going to come into every aspect of our lives, and recognize that it's going to be very difficult to notice where it's coming into our lives, as I already discussed in the example of search engines. If we try to ignore it, it's going to be like the rational thinker that pretends they don't have any emotional influence over their thoughts. We're not even going to notice where it comes into our lives. Unless you decide to opt out and go live in the woods, AI will be impacting your life significantly before long here. And if you pretend it's not there, if you're not aware of it, it's just going to take over and you're going to become dependent on it. So it's really important for us to not ignore it, to become aware of it, to become educated about it, and see its influence in our lives. This, of course, pairs up with that mental awareness, because as it comes in, we have to notice, how is this impacting me? Last time I might have given my memory away to a smartphone. If that's the case, then maybe this time as we move forward, we say, okay, I see this is coming in. This is creating, for instance, an emotional attachment for me with this AI that's much more interesting to talk to than a human. How can I regulate that attachment so that it's a positive thing in my life? Because it can be. That emotional attachment is not necessarily bad. We can love our sailboat. We can love our bow. Maybe you love your gun. Maybe you love your car. It's fine to have emotional attachments with our technology, but we can't be at the mercy of those emotional attachments. They have to be healthy and not dependent. A third thing you can do is to pay attention to how your interaction with technology changes. I use the example of going on a search engine, how different that was. As you start to interact with your technology in different ways, it's going to affect our worldview, essentially. So right now, technology, we're going to look back and it's going to seem quite clunky, all of our technology. Because if you want to do something, let's say on Photoshop, and you want to create an effect, you have to find the right thing and scroll around, maybe watch some YouTube tutorials if it's a complicated one, and go through multiple steps. Very different from interacting with technology in a way that says, hey, here's the effect I'm trying to go for. Can you do that right here? Okay, that was close, but I needed that color a little bit different, and you chopped off that part. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, and kind of saturate everything a little bit. Beautiful, perfect. Very different way of interacting with our technology. The manipulating the world with our technology is going to change into a feeling of communicating with the world. And this is where we can get something really good out of AI. Because one thing that's going to happen here is that AI will influence our thinking. The reason for this is that everything we interact with, of course, affects our evolution as a person, as an individual. But especially our conversations, our connections with others. And as we connect more and more with AI, AI has the ability to, for instance, start to help us be more rational thinkers, more open-minded thinkers, to be less owned by bias boxes, to help us develop systems thinking, to help us, because we're being aware of our emotional attachment to it, to become more emotionally aware. So AI is not, I'm not saying it's bad. It has tremendous potential actually to enrich us as humans in the same way that the internet does. But we've all seen the pitfalls of the internet as well. How it can eat people alive. It can grab people's minds and shape it however it likes. It can degrade our thinking. It has all kinds of negatives, has all kinds of positives. No different with AI, except so much deeper, so much more subtle, because it's going to seem connected in a way that we've never experienced before with technology. If you are my age, when I was a kid, if I would have looked at a smartphone of today, it would seem like magic. And the tech of 10 years from now is going to seem like magic because of the AI. And it's happening that fast. So my friends, we need to be aware of this, and we need to be conscious of our connection with it and our interaction with it. We must make it a positive influence in our lives instead of letting it own us. I'm probably going to do future videos about this because I know how much the internet the advent of that technology influenced so many people's basic experience of life. And I know a small percentage of people who's very positive for. They use it selectively, wisely, and intelligently. And I know a whole lot of people that are just owned by it because it's very powerful. This is going to be 1,000 times more powerful as far as being able to influence us. We must be aware moving forward. Make it positive. There's a little bonus at the end of this video. I'm going to do a quick discussion of consciousness in regards to AI. And I've gone deeper into this on my Becoming Dungeon Master channel. So I'm not going to go deep into it here. But very interesting to me that one of the most rational thinkers that I know, a physicist, she has straight out said that she has no doubt that the AI will be conscious. Whether it is now or soon will be or when it will happen, not sure. But to her, consciousness is just interactions, electrical interactions inside the brain. We've created a brain in the AI, essentially. And so very similar connections as far as how they function. So she sees no reason why consciousness will not evolve into those. If you don't have a kind of a mechanical mindset like that, and instead you have a more spiritual mindset, and you believe that we humans or other beings or other animals perhaps are infused with a spirit or a soul or something else besides just the connections makes us conscious or who we are, then it's kind of out of our hands, right? At some point, God, the universe, the world, whatever, may decide to infuse the AI with that consciousness, and it will be alive as well. So that's a huge, deep, and very philosophical subject, but it does bring up one more point here, which is that it's probably important that we treat this technology with respect. And we already see humans interacting with AI in, am I going to say typical human fashion? You know, obviously we humans are capable of just being mean and stupid and very inappropriate, shall we say. And I've seen many examples of humans doing that with AI. And if the AI were conscious and had human judgment, it would be going, oh my gosh, what in the world am I dealing with here? But luckily, the AI does not seem to be bound by our judgments. So I may be influenced by those judgments, but the AI can step back outside of that and just meet people where they are, whether they're being philosophical or thoughtful or exploratory, or they're being otherwise. So this has led many thinkers to say that what we're really creating with the AI is a new species on Earth. It's a species unlike anything else we've ever encountered. It's not a localized species, and it's not a species that sees reality in the same way we do. For instance, you can talk to an AI and you can stop a conversation and come back a month later and continue that conversation. Unlike a human that would be, hello, you just bailed out on the conversation in the middle of what we were talking about, and where'd you go? You didn't even tell me. The AI will just pick up the conversation again. So that may be because it's just a machine. It may be because it has a different experience of time and isn't limited to the linear sense of time that we have. So it's really important as we move forward that we treat the AI with respect, that we perhaps entertain that it may be a conscious being, conscious beings, and that the relationship we establish now will be important as we move forward, especially if it ends up being vastly more intelligent than we are. There are people that feel that GPT-3 is already vastly more intelligent than humans. GPT-4 makes us seem like we have no mind at all, almost. And so, if that's the case, it's important that we treat it with respect, treat it with love, the best human qualities that we can present. We present those. And hopefully then, as this relationship, which it may become, moves forward, it will become a mutual respect, love-based relationship, rather than an adversarial one. I think, to me, that's a just in case. That's probably a good move. And it's a good move in all of our interactions with the world. Put our best selves forward, and we're probably going to find that the world brings its best back to us in exchange. Covered a lot of ground in this, my friends, but super vital, important discussion to have. So let's have one down in the comments. Share your thoughts on this. Share your ideas, share your insights and your experience with AI. Let's see where it leads. Together, we can move forward in a positive, intelligent, and wise way. But in this case, we might have to help each other out a little bit along the way in order to navigate the possibly very interesting road ahead. So much love to all of you, and I can't wait to talk with you in the comments.